I'm Julie Faithan Balzer, and with me is our guest artist, Dina Wakley. And today is all about time-honored techniques that stand the test of time. Welcome, Dina.
Thank you.
So we're stitching today, but we don't actually have to be able to do any drawing, you promised me, to get these stitches on.
No, you actually don't have to be good at stitching.
Oh, that's great. You don't have to be good at stitching or drawing.
The first time I picked up a needle, I was a little kid, and my mother would have us make clothing for our dolls out of spare socks.
Wow, that's cool.
And so stitching is just, it's been around for 30,000 years. And so it's fun to reinvent it and put it into our work, but not have to be good at it. So I want to show you a couple of backgrounds that I like to do and then stitch over them. And so let's just paint on fabric.
Okay, so we're just a plain piece of fabric, some acrylic paint. I know that you watered it down. Is that because you're painting on fabric?
Yeah, well, I just want it to soak in and look more like it's been stained.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so there's a famous artist named Helen Frankenthaler, and what she used to do is pour house paint over unprimed canvas. And so in a way, this kind of honors her, too. It's just it's an abstract painting.
It is.
You're creating a little abstract painting in the background.
And I noticed that color-wise, you've even gone with the primaries pretty much. You've gone with a kind of red, a yellow, and a kind of blue.
You want it to pop, because this is not our grandma's embroidery.
No.
This is not cute little flowers for your wedding. This is fun and funky art. So do this, set it aside, let it dry, and then you can stitch over that and make a funky background. So here is my sample done over the abstract painting.
So cool.
Funky faces. I like to use the embroidery floss with all 6 strands.
So it's nice and fat, because you can separate it so that it's a little thinner and you don't see the stitching as much.
Correct. So you want it to be bold. You want your stitching to stand up to that crazy background. So this background's nice and bold. So here's another idea. So when I first started getting back into stitching, I spent hours on the internet trying to find patterns.
Okay.
And then it occurred to me, why am I doing that? I have a craft room, a studio, an art studio full of patterns, right?
Oh yeah, because you have rubber stamps.
We have rubber stamps. We have stencils.
Ooh, why are you spraying your stamp with water?
Well, what I want to do is apply water-soluble crayon pigment right to the stamp.
Oh, so the water is there because otherwise it won't activate.
Correct. And what is it going to do on the fabric, do you think?
I assume it's going to sort of wick and bleed into it instead of being a crisp image.
Right. And it's going to look artsy-fartsy.
Oh, cool. Because you're not going for a perfect base image. You're just going for something that gives you something to embellish and add to.
Right. Remember, this is not your grandma's embroidery.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of times with stitching, people want to do it with a pencil that's going to disappear or something like that, where you'll never see that there was an underdrawing. And what you're doing is giving us permission to say, no, 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 the underdrawing is part of the finished design.
Yeah, it's part of the finished design. It's just a guide. You can go rogue. You don't have to be great at stitching. This is an example where I use that water-soluble pigment in the background.
I can see, and it bleeds. It looks like watercolor almost.
It looks like watercolor.
Dye even.
Yeah, it does look like dye because the fabric is not primed.
No, obviously, because this is water-soluble, you can't wash it or do anything like that. It's really meant for display.
For display.
Yes.
But you could make a little pillow. You could make a little wall hanging. Always great for little gifts and cards and incorporating those things. Last idea, last but not least, why not just stamp? Use a permanent ink. Take that stamp. Let me just wipe this off on my trousers there. We're going to get some of the water off. I'm just going to take a permanent ink.
I feel like, Dina, you always give us so much permission with art supplies to say, it doesn't matter, get messy, it's okay. You know, it's totally fine. You don't have to be perfect.
Right. And I always use a light ink.
Okay.
So if I use a light ink, then if it does show through, because I'm a bad stitcher,
who cares?
No big deal.
Yeah.
You can look at my face sample here. I bet you didn't notice, but there's lots of the lines I didn't bother stitching over.
So those are actually all based on top of stamps.
So all stamped images. So here's the same image that I've already stamped, put in an embroidery hoop. Another little tip, pre-thread all your needles. This saves me a ton of time. And I bought lots of different books when I got back into stitching, and I thought, well, I'm going to do all these great stitches and fancy stitches and French knots. I never do them. I never do them. You know why? Because I want you to think of your stitching like doodling. If you had a pen and you were going to make marks on this, what would you do?
I would trace the lines,
You
I
would
guess.
trace the lines. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with just up and down stitching, okay? And
Are you matching the color of your thread to the color of the stamping that you did?
Not on purpose, but that was
just a happy coincidence.
It's a happy coincidence.
Okay.
I just like this color. So once you do one stitch like that, if you bring your needle up a little lower,
yeah,
come back up and go back in the hole.
So a basic back stitch is what we're talking about.
A running back stitch, right?
Okay.
And then what's fun about funky art stitching, if I end up like this, if my stitch goes goofy,
it doesn't matter.
It does not matter, because your embroidery home ec teacher from 7th grade is not going to be flipping over the back telling you
see what it looks
telling
like.
you, oh, there's a knot in the back, and why not tie a knot? So sometimes I'll even come around and black
Crazy.
out eyes and do all sorts of fun things.
But it's like you have the opportunity now to make the stitching whatever you want, and you have the confidence of knowing that there's a basic roadmap which you can either choose to obey or ignore.
And if you're on the funkier side anyway, like I would say you and I are, we don't want the cutesy little embroidery patterns that are available anyway. We want the fun, funky ones, which we have in our art rooms.
This is a great way to repurpose what you already have, what you already love. You don't need to be able to draw.
Nope.
You don't need to be able to stitch.
Nope.
And it's so portable. I don't know about you, but I love taking my stitching on the road with me.
And you're still doing something creative. I love to stream TV late at night, and I'll sit there and watch all this. And can't you do this on paper?
Well, I see that, in fact, you can. Is this a page out of your journal? It looks like it ripped it right on out.
I did. I ripped it right out, and when I'm stitching at home, I don't rip them out. I just stitch. Have you ever stitched on through paper?
I have. It's hard, right?
It is hard.
You got to really push.
Here you can see the needle kind of poking through. Try it.
Okay.
But you can't tell. You're almost stitching blind.
You
but then
are. You got to guess, and you got to really get your finger through there.
But, and this will help. An office supply for sorting envelope type thimble. But
I was going to say, I've even used pliers to pull
if
the
you
needle
have to.
through if I have to.
But it creates such an interesting effect. So like, let's say you want to doodle on this.
Yes.
Instead of grabbing your pens one night, instead grab your needle and your thread, and you can even do art marks and doodling all throughout all of your pieces.
That's so
you can even
cool.
do your journaling
And
stitching.
I love also that this can be collaborative. So for instance, you could paint and draw something like you have, and then I can stitch on it, and this can be a piece that we have done together.
Exactly.
Which is super
And
neat.
it's honoring feminine tradition, because it's been the women for centuries and centuries that have embroidered. And I feel like it's a way to kind of connect with ancestors and just do
With
something
the past
a little
and
different.
modernize it. I mean, I think it's about honoring it, and then yet at the same time putting your own twist on it so that it's the kind of art that you like. I'm a big fan of embracing your personal style.
Which is what's so fun about this. There's something really therapeutic about having this needle in your hand, and meditative, and because it's monotonous, it lulls your mind and it makes you feel good.
Super cool, Dina.